Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the community meeting for the 10th of September. So let's go through I think what we do is we go through the actions from the last time. I have to say I wasn't PTO for the last community meeting, so I might have missed a few things, but let's just go through the to-do items. First one is checking possibility to develop the mobile services on major Linux distros. Okay, Wojtek, do you want to go into this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not yet started this, but I plan to install it on my second notebook, like vanilla distribution there, and try the go through the documentation and do it according to the documentation and check if there is something missing or we need to add some notes for platform specific stuff.
Okay, is the idea here that we document the installation process for various Linux distributions?
Yeah, I think only if necessary, if there are any deviations from the what we have now in the documentation, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So if anyone is running a specific Linux distro, maybe they can contribute to those docs. Okay, but I see that that's in progress. So I think we can just leave it there. Did you create a document where? Oh yeah, there is already one. No, that's referring to the docs. Okay. But maybe if you have, or after you created some document, just post the link inside here, and maybe someone else wants to contribute too.
Okay.
Okay. The other one is sync all AeroGear repos with standardized issues, PR templates, contribution guidelines. I think this was in progress, or I think Camilla did some work here. Is Camilla? Yeah, Camilla has joined. How's that one going, Camilla?
This one, I think we need to ask for Wojtek. Is Wojtek here?
Wojciech Trotsky?
Oh yeah,
sorry
guys. Yeah.
She's one. Yeah, the PR template's always there, but she needs to bump it up. Sorry.
I think you're breaking up, Camilla. Not sure if I heard everything.
I think I will sync with Camila off list so we can move on. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, that sounds
network
good.
problems.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear properly, but I remember from last week that I think the comment Camilla had was that, Wojciech, you maybe had some way that you could sync everything now that it's merged to all the other repos. So that was the comment I think Camilla was trying to say there. But yeah, okay. I think it's fine to take that one offline, but I believe that's what Camilla was trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. If you can just sync with Camilla and find a solution for this, then I will leave it in to do for now. Or actually, it's in progress, right? So I could move it over to in progress. Okay, so that was all we have in the to-do column. Next step is to go through the new items. So I give you 2 or 3 minutes to add your votes here. I voted already before the meeting, so I won't vote. But yeah, feel free to vote now. Has everyone had a chance to vote? Okay, I take that as yes. So the top voted item here is the versioning. We need to figure out how we are versioning mobile.next overall. This one was created by Laura. So I take it that this is about not one particular version or how we version one particular project, but how we sync versions across all the projects in mobile.next. Is that correct, Laura?
Yes, this one was added by me, but it was taken from a sprint review meeting discussion that happened with the service team. So I added the different levels we should probably talk about, which is the overall mobile next version, service level versioning, SDK versioning, and docs versioning. There's probably lots of different conversations going on around all of those. So I guess this is an attempt to centralize those. Pavel also kicked off a thread about it because it came up recently as we tried to do a release at the end of the sprint just finished, which was just a release on the sync service. So probably lots of discussions there, and just to open it up and basically see can we come to some decision about how we want to do it.
Okay.
I threw my suggestion in chat, but basically have our big end of sprint cycle releases being either just dates or incrementing numbers. And all a big release really does is it just says, these are the components we know all work together, and here are the docs for these components. But each individual component is following semantic versioning with, your patch level is bug fixes, your minor level is new features, and your major level indicates a breaking change. And I don't think there needs to be much more than that. And it seems pretty simple and easy to just look at and go, this is everything that AeroGear 2018-06 includes. And from the version number of AeroGear, it's 2018 June. So it's 4 months old and yada, yada, yada.
That sounds like a good approach, yes. The only question I have about this is things like SDKs are not really tied to one specific version, so would they be versioned separately or have their own big version number?
Everything that is not AeroGear like Splat, everything that is not the release is versioned independently of each other, and each of those components just follow semantic versioning unless there's a reason not to. And all the big releases is just a table of these are all the things that we know that work together and the documentation for these versions of these things.
Okay. It would probably. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a quick question. Would that table include the SDK version that works with specific releases of the platform or the product? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like AeroGear 2018-06 or AeroGear 2. I don't care. That number's kind of meaningless for the purpose of this discussion. It'll be like sync server, blah 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 version 123 and npm is compatible with OpenShift whatever is compatible with SDK whatever, iOS SDK whatever, Android SDK whatever, and they are all on whatever version numbers that their life cycle has put them at.
Yeah, so it could be like a range or something.
Yeah, it could be a range. It could be like, this is the thing we know works, just whatever we decide. But all the releases are just, this is stuff we know that works together. And if you fall outside of this, we can't guarantee that this documentation will work or these components will be compatible.
Gotcha.
When you say range, do you mean we just use semantic versioning to say that everything under a dot release is is compatible with each other, and if the major version changes, then it's probably no longer compatible? Or do you mean ranges in the sense of, I think Maven has some notation where you use square brackets to indicate ranges. So would it just be semantic versioning?
Is that a question for me, Peter, or for Summers?
But probably Summers, but whoever wants to answer it.
If a version range is appropriate, then there's no reason we can't use it. For instance, if we know we just have a whole bunch of, if we have like, if we go a year, we have 4 AeroGear releases, and we know that the Android SDK hasn't had any hasn't had any new APIs added to it, and we've just been fixing bugs, then there's no reason we can't say this works with Android SDKs 3.1.0 through 3.1.15 or whatever they are. Also, all the version numbers I'm using are just made up right now, so don't go looking for any of them. They're just as examples. But if we have a major push where we rewrite all of our client services, and we have to have breaking changes in all of our SDKs and breaking changes in all of our APBs and breaking changes in all of our server-side stuff, then there's no reason you won't see a, AeroGear 2019-12 for the December release in 2019. Just have everything at 5.00 because we broke all of the backwards compatibility in that. So there wouldn't be ranges in that case because we wouldn't have ranges. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So let's say we are preparing the next release. When we follow this practice, we would give one version number to all the services. We would give one version number that could be different to all the SDKs, and APBs, I guess, would have the same or would share the version number with all the services. So we could say that all the services will have version 1.0.0. All the SDKs will have, I don't know what they are at the moment, probably something like 1.2.0, and that's what we release.
It's 2.0.0.
Or 2.0.0, yeah. But we would make sure that all services share the same version number and all SDKs share the same version number, but they don't.
There's no reason to make them all share the same number. It's just extra bookkeeping and churn.
Oh, okay. And when you say, okay, sorry.
If we don't touch the Xamarin SDK, there's no reason to bump the Xamarin SDK just because there was a new AeroGear release. We just test the old one with the features it has, and if it still works, then we just include it.
Okay, but
also, Peter, we made that assumption when we started with Mobile Next, so the services would have stayed somewhat aligned, but the SDKs have moved on. So I think they're already ahead. So I don't know if that would be possible to fix that, but I think we had kind of discussed and agreed that we were okay that the SDKs would move on independently, but that we tried to keep the services together. But I think the reason we're having the discussion now is because sync mailing is being progressed, and we're attempting to version that at the end of each sprint. So I think Pavel also had kicked off a thread about this. So Pavel, there's some considerations around the catalog and the need to have the versions the same, right?
Yeah, I was doing some investigations today in the morning, and I was kind of experimenting with using multiple tags for getting the APBs into the catalog. But yeah, I've noticed one important thing, that even if you get all the versions into the catalog, you have no way to find out which version are you currently provisioning, unless you know about some changes that were made to it, because the version is not visible in the UI, and this is something I think we need to figure out.
Yeah, I wonder, does it even matter for the user? They would provision an APB, so they would probably not even know what version of the service they are using. They only probably take the latest tag of the APB or the date tag of the APB.
Yeah, so if you're using one simple tag, just a single tag, that's no problem at all. But if you're using multiple tags, it means like if you want to get more versions of the APBs, there's currently no way how to get the version of the APB for provisioning currently in the UI. But using a single tag is okay. That's not a problem.
So, but if we use 100, 100, it doesn't have a sync. So adding 010 will just add the sync on top of that. So technically, once we reach that and we'll be able to release it, we'll be kind of feature complete. We can just release 3030 as whatever next platform version will be. It's just for the moment, it doesn't make any sense to bump any other APBs when there's absolutely no changes to them.
Why you are tagging like in this way, putting the docs like you should use the tag 1.00 or 2.00 instead of the latest one is the released one, and we use it like latest is the production one, and development is the dev one with all that you are working with, because it's easy to reduce the complexity. Do you know the user always uses the same tag, the latest one, and we can use it always the same tag to work like the developer one.
Yeah, I think if we change that approach in our CI to move merges to master to not be published as latest, but just published to development or nightly or whatever, then we'll be able to use latest as the latest release, and then this will reduce the friction for the users, will resolve the problems with the tagging and I didn't want to mention it here because there's another conversation map that we need to talk about. I think Camila, you created that another card somewhere about the
installation. Yeah.
But actually, this is duplicate. So I think that if we're talking only about APB and sync problems, if we kind of use development once and latest will be mapping to the kind of latest release, then we can avoid using the tag. But I will look for opinions about it. I'm not sure if it's like doesn't have any side effects or something.
Okay. So we're nearing the 10-minute mark for this. Maybe let's just recap what we discussed. So, Thomas, if I understand your suggestion correctly, then what we would do is we would not really care about the versions of the individual services or SDKs, but we would call the release something like September 2018, and then we would document it as a matrix, possibly in the docs, where we list all the versions of the components that are compatible with each other. So a release would be, well, yeah, a matrix of components or a list of components that work with each other. Is that?
Just a comment here. Like, I think it's a good discussion, right? But versioning, you know, when you're doing it in a microservices world, is not really trivial. We had a proposal around this some time back, and we kind of paused it. We kind of left it sit for a while, and we were kind of pitching that the service had its set of components, and it had its own compatibility matrix internally, and then you had a kind of a compatibility matrix between different services. So you have your auth service and your sync service, what's compatible at that level. So I think there's a good bit of discussion here. I kind of feel that we won't resolve it here in this session, that maybe we should formalize it, be it a proposal or something, and get people's input there and get agreement.
Just one question for you. If we do it this way, why the customer needs to care about the version of the ECG keys? Should not the customer just use the latest one and all will be compatible there?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So I think the customer doesn't really have to care about the version of the services. They only care about the version of the APBs. And as you said, they will probably use the latest tag always.
And we don't need this document or create something that will be hard and every time need to document and map and things like that. It will be easier.
So the customers need to know the version of things so that when they have a problem, they can tell us what version they're using. Because if they use, version X, and then on version X+1 we fix a bug, and they say they have a bug, and they just know I am using this thing, and they don't know what version, then we don't know if it's a regression in X+2, or if it's, they're only on X and they need to upgrade, or if there's some reason they can't stay. So customers need to know what versions they're on just so they can tell us what's happening when they have a problem.
But in what part? Because if the customer have a problem, to use maybe I'm not understanding what you mean. But if the user have a problem, they installing the product and have a problem in the installation to use the product, something is not working in the console. So
I'm not talking about installing the product. I'm talking about 6 months down the line when they're using it, like they have code that's written and it's time to do, and a bug comes up.
But what is the difference of this scenario with the scenario that we have in RichMap, for example, where the customer have the application and have a ECG key in X version, and if they have a problem, they will tell I'm using the lead in the version X, or we will ask what the version is using, and we can recommend the use a latest one and check the change log of that leading specifically.
Or maybe if you tag your APB with a version number like September 2018, and the customer can tell us which APB tag they installed, then we know internally which versions that involves for all the services. So that could be a way that works.
It's not possible we check the version in the project, for example.
It is, but we don't have a standardized way that all the services expose their versions. So if we go back to this big release where we have a tag for a specific release, and the customer can tell us, I installed the tag September 2018 of this of the release, then we should know which versions of the services this involves.
So I think we should try to standardize the versions in the leads. We should just provide a way that they get the versions of the project that they are using.
That's probably a good idea too. But I agree with Chris. I think we won't be able to solve it in this meeting, but I wonder, so there exists a proposal by you, Chris. Is this something that should be discussed on the mailing list, or is this too internal and we should comment on this proposal? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it be internal or here. I think it needs a fairly detailed discussion and to kind of track the different potential use cases, flows. Like, we're exposing an identity management or auth service. What happens when Keycloak steps its version? There's a number of different things we need to consider here. I don't know if kind of we can get a simple catch-all solution for this. So I definitely think it deserves a fairly detailed discussion. Where I'm unsure, to be honest.
Okay, it looks like so a few people are in favor of putting it on the mailing list. So what I'm going to do is I add an action for me to kick this off on the mailing list.
Peter, there is a couple of threads that were kicked off. Pavel's one being one
Oh,
example. I
okay.
think he sent that Friday, and then also what we didn't talk about here, which again I won't dig into, but I just want to call out that we didn't talk about the docs versioning because Paul Wright's not on the call, and he has also kicked off some threads around that. They might be a little bit older, but I think just general encouragement to engage with the thread if the question is asked around versioning. Also, I think Wojciech made a good point in the chat there that it's, as a group, I think the comment you made was that maybe one person should be in a position to make a decision. While it's good to get all the input from everybody and the experience and the recommendations, it's probably going to come down to a small group, maybe looking at just deciding on which we want to go with based on all the input and all the considerations that we have to take into account. That's just my 2 cents anyway, but also just to call out the time as well.
Yes.
Again.
So, okay, yeah, so there are a few threads already. I will read them, especially Pavel's one, and we'll try to add a response there. And just as an encouragement for everyone to maybe also add responses to this versioning thread that we already have on the mailing list. So, Laura, I need to drop off for the migration call now. Can I hand over to you for the next one? The next topic is what is AeroGear Sync? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure, that's no problem. Thanks for the first part of the meeting, Peter.
Yep, thanks. I stop sharing now. See you, everyone.
See ya.
See you.
So you should be able to see my screen now, which board on it, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'll just close. Just going to add further discussion needed on that one, even though we did discuss it. I don't feel we didn't make it, certainly didn't make a decision anyway. Okay, so next up, what is AeroGear Sync? I believe this one was added by Wojciech, and there's also a thread around it. So Wojciech, you might be able to give us some detail on this one.
So basically, as a team now, we have this large 5.0 team. We work mainly on AeroGear Sync plus other services. Plus, we still maintain the other services. And within the Sync, what we're trying to do is just avoid the situation where we building something that community doesn't want to, or we kind of replicating and building solutions that are already available within the upstream. So there are already existing open source projects that are providing this kind of functionality. So I just wanted to kickstart this conversation and hear from you guys what kind of ideas, what kind of requirements, maybe if there's community, you may think that the community or possible users can have in the future. And within the team, we also done this what is AeroGear Sync, and I ask people to add those. So we have we based on Apollo GraphQL solution. So this is one of the major GraphQL API layers, and we're trying to add the sync on top of that. To avoid disruption, I think the best way to do it is if we just give it some time for people and to just write the comments down there and tell what they think about AeroGear Sync is, and then we can just ask Laura to go through it. And it will definitely help the team to apply this. Or it may be the most important part, I think, in this is what AeroGear Sync it's not. So what we shouldn't build, what kind of functionalities are not needed. It could be based on previous experience or the previous version of the sync, and so on.
Okay, so you want people to add their thoughts to the Trello card, is it?
Yeah. This is literally what's in the description. So the idea is that we would just spend like 2 minutes, or even just leave it for next time. We can just review it again. It's more important for us to get that kind of top level vision and possibly talk about. So in the meantime, while the comments will be added, we can collect some verbal responses.
Yeah, I think there was also a thread, Wojciech, but I'm not coming across it in the AeroGear archives.
Yeah. It's not on AeroGear. We done this internally between ourselves in the team just to synchronize what AeroGear thing is. So it's like my response mostly just kind of including some of the points from the internal discussion. Just as example, I didn't mean this to be a kind of.
What do you think about put this comment that you put in the card, like in a document, and sharing the mail list for everybody be able to comment, do this kind of interaction?
Yeah. So I think we didn't do it on the list. So best way. Do you guys think that we should skip it and talk about it on the list? I think it would be great if we just post it on the list.
Yeah, I think it's probably a big conversation, and because we're kind of the sync service is quite new, I think it would be good to get everybody's thoughts and carve out maybe a vision. Probably won't do that in the next 6 minutes. So
Yeah.
I don't have any objection to doing it on the mailing list, but I would like it if people agreed that maybe we convene and talk about it again. So rather than just doing it on the mail and having all the comments in there, we can come back together and put something together that can come from one person. That makes sense, where we write it down. And I think it'd be nice if we get something out of this to have it on the website, the AeroGear.org website. That could be cool. So I think instead of, I suppose, just having a focus, like the idea, at least from what I can see from your questions, is that we have a good, clear vision of where we're going with Sync and where we're not going with it. So if people keep in mind, I guess, the output of this is that we have something short and sweet, and then maybe something a little bit longer along the lines of a vision of where we're going.
Yeah, I think it'd be very, very beneficial discussion, and I think having it on the mailing list to get people can think through it a bit themselves, and then to kind of reconvene and discuss, I think would be really good, and to make sure that we're all aligned and going in the same direction. So I think it's a very good idea.
Cool. I created an action item there. Can I assign
I'm
something
doing
to
it
that?
at the moment.
Oh, great. Okay. I'll assign you Wojciech, so feel free to move it in like 2 minutes when it's done.
Thanks.
Cool. I'll put the further discussion needed on that one. I might just put next Monday as a due date on it. Just give a week for people to respond to that. And I suppose if it makes sense, maybe we'll schedule something in between, or we can revisit it next week. But I think a week should be enough, right, to everybody add their thoughts. Cool. So there is 3 minutes till the end of the call, so I won't go on to another topic. I don't imagine we'd have it in 3 minutes anyway. Are there any questions, comments, or feedback about the two that we talked about in this meeting that anybody wants to add before we close? Thanks everybody for joining, and have a good day.
Bye bye. Have a good day.